Hey guys, what's up? It's River, and today we're comparing the T7i with the Canon 80D. Now it's really hard to compare these two cameras because I personally love both of them. But let's do an in-depth comparison of what's right for you in 2019, what these cameras can do, and what really makes sense. Let's get into it. Also, just to let you guys know, there's a link in the description below with the best pricing on these cameras. I buy almost everything in my life from Amazon, and the kind of camera packages and the camera bundles you can get on Amazon, you simply cannot get at Best Buy or your local camera store, so I highly recommend that. So these cameras both have the exact same sensor, which makes the image quality from them very, very similar, and they both have 45 points of autofocus, which means they're super duper good in photos. So what's the real difference? The T7i has a slightly newer image processor because it came out later than the Canon 80D, and what that translates to is that it's better in low light and it has slightly, just slightly, better image processing, so you'll get a cleaner image. Both have very robust builds, they both have articulating flip screens with touch control on them, and they both do 60 frames per second for slow motion. Cameras both have 45 cross-type points of autofocus, which is a fancy way of saying there's autofocus points all over the sensor. So if you're shooting in challenging environments, sports photography, event photography, or anything where you're doing and tracking a lot of motion, these cameras are perfect. 80D does do 7 frames per second, while the T7i does 6 frames per second. To be honest, it's negligible. You will not notice the difference there. And these cameras are also very neck and neck when it comes to video. It has dual pixel autofocus in both cameras. They both do 1080 at 60 for slow motion, and they both have really good low light and very similar ISO ranges. As I mentioned previously, the T7i has a slightly newer processor, which gives it slightly better image processing, but honestly, neck and neck, if you really sat down and compared the two images, you're really not going to notice the difference. Canon 80D right off the bat is a bigger, beefier, and just like a chunkier camera, which feels better in your hands, and it is weather resistant. It's not waterproof, but it is weather resistant. So if you're going to challenging shooting environments like a forest, nightclubs where it gets very, very humid, you can feel pretty confident that your camera will hold up. The Canon T7i is still very well built, but it's made of like just plain old plastic. It's not weather resistant, and it does feel a bit flimsier, but I promise you Canon cameras are very well built and they last forever, but it doesn't have the same heft to it. So if you want something that's lighter, like if you're a vlogger, you will actually appreciate the T7i because it feels lighter and it's easier to hold in front of your hand. And if you're going hiking, the Canon 80D around your neck will start to bear down on you after 4 hours of hiking, where T7i really feels very light. So what really sets the Canon 80D apart and what makes it worth the extra $200? And the answer is really simple. Bigger body, it's robust, feels better in your hands, and it's weatherproof. It's not waterproof, but if you're taking it into like wet or rainy environments, you can feel pretty confident that you'll be fine. And it has a better battery life. So if you're someone that's shooting maybe a documentary or just kind of running and gunning all day, you'll have the confidence of knowing that like, hey, my battery's gonna last me probably most of my day. And on top of that, it has an LCD screen at the top of the camera, so you can quickly look down, see your settings, and know that you're shooting in the right shutter speed, aperture, what have you. And because they kept filmmakers in mind for this camera, where the headphone jack is placed, when you twist your articulating screen, it doesn't hit the headphone jack. It does hit it on the T7i and most cameras, but on the Canon 80D, you will not hit your headphone jack when you're twisting your articulating screen. Now that might be a little thing, but if you're shooting professional or mid-range stuff, you will honestly notice that. If you recall the Canon 80D review we did a while back, you'll remember that what I really, really loved about that camera was the design, the way it was built. It was really made for filmmakers. If you're not a heavy video person, I can honestly tell you the Canon 80D is not worth it. So in conclusion, what does this really mean? It's really simple. The Canon T7i is a prosumer, consumer camera, and the Canon 80D is marketed more towards a professional, someone who makes money with their camera audience. Now the two cameras are really neck and neck. They both do photos very similarly, video very similarly, but if you're a professional, I promise you, you will feel the difference with an 80D. But if you're not a professional, save yourself the extra $200. Get the T7i. Guys, thanks again for checking out the video. Be sure to like and subscribe for future content. If you have any questions whatsoever about this camera or filmmaking in general, hit me down in the comments below and I'll be sure to get back to every single one of you. And once again, there's a link in the description down below for the best pricing on these cameras. I get all my stuff off Amazon, and the kind of camera bundles and camera packages you can get on Amazon, you simply cannot get in other places. Until next time, guys.